Okay, hello everyone. Thank you so much for attending our webinar today. Our topic today is eco-innovation, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and let's get going. Okay. All right, so like I said, our April feature is eco-innovation. Okay, we're back. Okay, our April feature is eco-innovation, and we're really excited to share this. We went with a subtle Earth Day theme, Earth Month theme, but really what we will be focusing on in this feature is construction, building, and product specification. And we are thinking here that as we look at this holistically, this idea of eco-innovation, we're thinking that we're evolving toward this future that's more aligned with the principles of nature, and not just in practice of specifying or building in a more eco-friendly way, but even being inspired design-wise from an aesthetic perspective as well. And we want to note that this shift is driven by many factors, which does include rising supply chain costs, technological innovation, environmental regulation. We're seeing a lot of these things being put into regulation and into code, and then also consumer demand. So we're watching this shift happen toward this eco-innovation. We've been watching it happen for a while, and we're seeing this built environment become more biodynamic. That includes elements that support native wildlife through design that echoes these more natural patterns, such as curves, which we'll talk about a little bit later on in the presentation today. And so we're kind of asking ourselves in 2022, we're still figuring out which eco-innovations actually have a true lasting impact on the health of our planet. We know that we're doing all of these things, but what actually is something tangible? What actually makes the difference? And so taking that as kind of our mission and taking it to heart that our role as designers, people who are specifying product, do have some power to kind of push and propel this eco-innovation forward. So we will take a look at what we're calling the eco-innovation consumer. So we did a little bit of research into sort of consumer behavior here and learned that there is a majority of consumers who do want to choose these eco-friendly options. And this is broad. This is not just related to our industry, just people in general. But then there's that disconnect between access to these more eco-friendly options, the cost and information. What does it all mean? There's so much marketing out there. There's a lot of confusion. So we have a statistic here, 65% of people, they want to buy these purpose-driven brands. They want to buy these brands that are advocating the sustainability, but only 26% actually do. So as designers, perhaps through design, we can narrow this intention action gap. When we look a little closer at this eco-innovation consumer, we are seeing that they are socially influenced to prioritize sustainability. So they're getting that messaging from their peers, from marketing, from social media, and that is one of the reasons why they feel that motivation to prioritize that. Of course, there's a more genuine aspect as well, but they do feel this responsibility to leave the world better than they found it. And last, considering themselves eco-friendly is a part of their personal identity, how they sort of frame themselves in the world. We have our what's in and what's out page. So this is sort of a summary of a few things that we will touch on later in the presentation. So I will just go over a few. But for our what's in, we have number one, all things circular economy, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Second one, curves. We'll talk about that one too. That's sort of a little teaser. It's kind of mysterious. Talking a little bit about wildlife habitat creation, plant biodiversity, really taking some inspiration from other industries on this sort of cost and sustainability innovation. We know that we do that in every other aspect of sort of trend and forecasting and seeing what's happening. So let's apply that same thing and see what other industries are doing to answer this sort of sustainability call. Construction innovation, of course, designing for disassembly. This is a really intriguing one, which we'll talk about later on. Local sourcing, and then the last one, just sort of a nice tie a bow on it, but environmental problem solving through design, which is what we are all here to do. For our what's out section, carbon neutral box checking, we will talk a little bit about that one later as well. And then just greenwashing, a lot of this marketing where you're not quite sure if it is greenwashing, meaning just marketing things as eco-friendly, but not having that substance or that actual impact behind it. Another thing that we have in our what's out is designing without considering disassembly or end of life for all components or of construction. And then using all newly manufactured construction materials, fixtures, and furniture, really looking to incorporate a little bit of that circular economy, a little bit of that reuse idea here as well. So number one here on our first slide to get into our content is Luzhou Forest City. So these are renderings here, but Stefano Bori Architetti has taken, we've seen, I'm sure many on this call have seen the vertical forest buildings that have already been constructed. And this is sort of the next level of that. So not having just the building, but a full city. So this is planned in South China. These are all, of course, renderings, but the idea here is that all the buildings in the city are covered with plants and everything is integrated in order to sort of control the pollution, in order to create this oxygen. They have geothermal, solar energy all incorporated. And then of course the use of plants, which something interesting that we thought it was worth noting is the plants create these noise barriers. We know many other benefits of plants, but had not thought about it in that way of creating a noise barrier. So just an interesting tidbit that our team pulled out from this that was inspiring. So another note here is that it is providing this biodiversity of living species through habitat creation. You know, birds, plants, native plants are supporting native pollinators and all of that. So you are inserting the building into sort of the habitat versus fully taking over the habitat is maybe a way of looking at it. So something that we can all bring a little closer to home into our own homes or into our own projects is the idea of these hydroponic farms. So thinking here that access to this hyper local fresh food is and will probably continue to become a more sought after amenity. So having food grown right where you can see it, something that it seems so simple, but we can see that becoming such a valuable amenity in the future as people are looking for more transparency in the food supply chain, as they are caring more about the health aspect of their food. Being able to really see where it's grown is we think going to become an amenity. So a few actual products that support this are the Urban Cultivator, which is in the upper left. This is a cool product the size of like a wine refrigerator, but you can grow microgreens in here. So that is a way to bring it right inside of the home, which is really cool. Farm Shelf on the bottom left is more of a commercial grade and size of a unit, but same thing. You can grow some small plants and microgreens in there as well. And then the Let Us Grow on the right is sort of this tower hydroponic farm that I think many are probably familiar with at this point, but thinking that they look really beautiful and sculptural, something that you can have indoor, you can have outdoor, so it's a little bit flexible here. We've seen multifamily communities have whole farms of these where they have like 30 or 40 on a rooftop, and they're really selling that as an amenity. So thinking that that is an inspiring way to do it, or you could have just one or a few. This product we've been excited about. It is the bee bricks. And they also have a bee pot, which is on the right. You can see it's kind of a planter. And this is designed by a firm, Green and Blue, based in Cornwall. And they're actually using waste material from a local quarry. So you kind of have that reuse, using what they have aspect of their story as well. But what this does is creates these nests for the solitary bees. So they can live in these little narrow openings in the brick. And actually, there have been some regulations passed in the UK that is introducing this new planning law where all new buildings, I think above 5 meters or something like that, need to actually include these bricks in order to provide these homes. So this is an example of how that regulation is sort of coming into play, but thinking that this is also a really inspiring story. People love saving the bees, love the bees. It makes a nice story. So thinking that we'll start to see more of this product in kind of all areas, but just interesting how sort of this habitat preservation or habitat creation is starting to become part of the construction and building story. Our team is a really big fan of the nature playground, but thinking that this is a way to take that traditional playground, the super bright primary color, structure, jungle gym structure, and create this more natural biophilic playscape, something that adults could feel comfortable kind of, jumping over, doing a workout near, reading a book, or even just feel comfortable watching their kids play near here. But seeing that these natural playgrounds are helping kids to develop sort of like beyond just the motor skills that traditional playgrounds are supposed to facilitate. So they're helping the kids are all working together and they're learning social skills and problem solving. And these playgrounds are just really beautiful to look at. So very inspired by this idea to bring these kind of concepts into a very tangible way. Here is where we're looking to some other industries to see how they are innovating, especially against this rising supply chain cost and pressure from consumers to maximize sustainability as part of their brand story. So we have a few examples. One is these flat wine bottles. So this company, Paca Mama, has created this flat wine bottle, and that the idea is that the shipping is much more efficient because you can pack more into a container and fit more into the container and to ship. So thinking that that's really interesting. A great example of how design has innovated this for sustainability, just from going from your traditional wine bottle shape to flat, you have a significant savings. Something else we're seeing is products that are shipping without water. So one example is Everest, which is a hair care brand. And so what they are doing, and many other brands are doing this as well, but they're taking out the water from their product. So it's shipping as a super concentrated, version of itself. And then the consumer adds water at home. So they're not needing to ship the water, which reduces the weight and the shipping costs and all of that, and therefore the carbon footprint of the shipping. And the consumer is able to add water at home. They can sell more concentrated in one bottle, so you're not buying it as often. So the savings kind of keep going like a domino effect. Similarly to that is Smart Cups, which is shown on the right. So this is an energy drink company, and they actually use, the technology is pretty cool. They use 3D printing to print the flavor or the energy active materials on the bottom of the cup. So that's what you see, that sort of pink purple pattern there at the bottom. That is actually the energy stuff. And then the consumer adds water at home, similar to the hair care. So they don't need to ship this product that is mostly water. The cup comes ready to go and the consumer just adds water themselves. So really interesting to see how these industries are taking these more concentrated form of their product and shipping it, and then the consumer needs to basically add water at home. Adidas has a new shoe out as well that they consider their lowest carbon emission running shoe. And just to show how this has become such a marketing and a selling point for consumers, we wanted to feature this shoe because it shows, you can see in that circle image, they've actually printed on the shoe in a way so you can kind of show everyone the carbon emissions that the shoe is creating, I guess, during production. So they're showing, the consumer is able to show how eco-friendly they are, how they support this brand because they are working to reduce their carbon emissions. So just an interesting kind of consumer behavior moment there with Adidas. A couple other examples for edible packaging. We had to create our whole page for this because it was so, it was so interesting and innovative. But not pla, I'm not quite sure how to say it, but it's not plastic, is creating these packaging, and it's not only biodegradable, but it's actually edible. So that image in the middle, I think that's water. So instead of a water bottle, you basically take this little pouch and you put it in your mouth and you kind of, I guess, pop it with your tongue, and then you just take a gulp of water. So It is sort of like a one sip little bubble, and the whole entire thing is edible. And then they're doing the same thing with ketchup. So you see the ketchup pack in the upper left and salad dressing. So if you wish to discard, you can, and it's completely biodegradable, or you can go ahead and just eat that. Elo Jello is a cup in the top, and that is also an edible cup. So that's supposed to replace your disposable plastic cups. And then Cupfee is pretty cool at the bottom. It is sort of marketed to be used as a like single-use coffee cup, but it's a cookie, so you can eat it when you're done. And they've engineered it so that it stays with the liquid in it. It stays sturdy and it doesn't get soggy for like so many hours. So really interesting to see how, especially in the food industry, this edible packaging, and even back looking here at some of these other brands, are innovating in order to speak to these rising supply chain costs and to answer that kind of consumer call to be more sustainable. So getting back to our industry, looking here at 3D printed construction, we took sort of a snapshot of what's going on in the 3D printing world within our industry right now. And Icon definitely kind of rose to the top as a leader here, but they have delivered 24 3D printed structures to date. They use this proprietary material called lavacrete. So it's this combination of cement fillers, additives, but it's so strong that it can survive this sort of extreme weather. So overall, just a broad stroke of 3D printing is, and the reason why it is considered more eco-friendly or more sustainable, number one is speed. They can print these things so quickly. So it's this decrease in labor, and it's near zero waste because you're just printing exactly what you need versus having all of this extra waste material. And all of these things can be replaced with this one technology of 3D printing, the foundation, insulation, interior, exterior sheathing, the moisture barrier, all of that, all of those different components in traditional construction are replaced with this one material or one method of this 3D printing. The other thing that is interesting, especially for us as designers, is the freedom that you get with this 3D printing, mainly the ability to sort of explore these curves and these slopes. So this freedom from traditional construction allows designers to sort of play with new shapes, new forms. And just thinking back to our original kind of musing on this whole topic, but those curves and those slopes sort of do mimic the natural shapes of nature, of Earth, more than our sort of linear, everything's a right angle traditional construction. So just something interesting to sort of marinate on. Another construction innovation in this sort of eco innovation world is mass timber construction. So here the idea is that we are using mass timber, which is these solid wood panels that are nailed together, glued together, and they provide this strength and stability that actually rivals steel. So you're replacing steel with a more renewable resource of wood that is just as strong and has this lower carbon footprint and all of that versus traditional steel. So the other thing about this form of construction is that it's very beautiful. You get some of those elements of biophilic design when you're looking at this wood, incorporating that into the design. And so this, especially with some new building codes that have passed recently, allowing these buildings to be taller, I think up to 18 stories is where we're at now. We are thinking that we will see more of this construction type approaching. So we do have a few examples here. Intro is a multifamily mass timber in Cleveland, and I believe it is set to open. Their website says spring, but our team in Cleveland let us know that it's still a construction site, so we'll have to keep our eye out for that. Hotel Magdalena in Austin is North America's first mass timber hotel. And then Heinz is doing has actually developed their own brand, T3. It's their own mass timber brand, and this is targeted toward sort of creative office. So there are many T3 buildings going up all over the country. Rodney Cook Senior Park. This is an interesting sort of eco-innovation that we wanted to feature because they took a problem and solved it in sort of a creative way, which is what, of course, us designers are always setting out to do. But this is in the Vine City neighborhood of Atlanta. They had this super low point that would flood frequently. And so instead, in order to keep this as an amenity space for the community, as a public space for the community, they designed this park as this sort of engineered drain. So during heavy storms, the park is actually designed to flood and protect the surrounding neighborhood while still having the park be usable and functioning, even with this, this flooding in the water. So you can see from the images that it's really beautiful. You can see all the usable space and how it, to the sort of like untrained eye, you wouldn't even know that it was designed to be sort of this engineered drain. Okay, so here we're looking at big innovation, both of these projects by Bjarke Ingels Group, but the first one on the left is the biosphere. This is a rendering. This is actually a hotel project in Sweden. It's one of the rooms in the Tree Hotel project. So a bunch of architects have created different treehouse style hotel rooms. And the biosphere, I believe, is the newest one, set to open this May. So this treehouse is covered with 350 birdhouses. And the idea is to help increase the bird population in this Swedish forest where it's located. And so you can see here that it's very beautiful. I believe this is still a rendering, but you can see the idea and the attention that they're bringing to, like we talked about before, engaging the present wildlife into the construction process or considering it in the building process. And then another example also from Bjarke Ingels Group here is the Copenhagen. So this is a waste to energy plant. So this this space that the public wouldn't normally engage with, this very industrial use building. And they created this whole rooftop activity park. So there's hiking trails, playgrounds, fitness structures, there's trails, climbing walls, and then in the winter, there are ski slopes. So bringing the public in to a space that is traditionally just industrial use only. And then we included this quote here, but a sustainable city is not only better for the environment, but also more enjoyable for the lives of its citizens. So thinking of ways to have things be multi-purpose, to engage with either the public in a way that they normally wouldn't, or with the wildlife where this construction is happening or this building is going in. Just some thought starters, ways to inspire or take away some of these big ideas into our own projects. Here we're looking at material bank. So we talked a little bit about specifying and how we as designers do have some control over the environmental impacts of what we spec. So looking into material bank, maybe many on this call are already aware of this, but just to click through, first we wanted to see from a supply chain perspective, if it was possible to filter by things that are stocked in North America, just to limit, number one, shipping time, shipping costs, but also things not having to ship from as far away in order to get to the project. And so that is possible to filter by this availability section here. You can click stocked in North America. And then they also have many filters for environmental benefits. So you can see a few examples here. And these tabs are all located here. So when you go to their main page, you can see all of these filters. And these are some that you can focus on if environmental impact is top of mind for your project. Also worth noting is that some of the filters, you can actually see the certifications and standards that they meet as well. And that is here. One example of this Parisian furniture brand that we were really inspired by is Tiptoe. So their whole brand is sort of centered around sustainability, from the design phase to considering the product's end of life, including all of their logistics and their supply chain. But one thing that we specifically thought was inspiring is that they actually sell some of their table legs, which you can see here. They sell them a la carte, so you can buy them just 3, like pictured in the stool, or 4 for a table or bench. And you can actually buy these legs and then use or reuse a piece of wood or a tabletop that you already have or that you can source locally, so that part of the product that you are actually making is local or something that you already have, or a way to reuse or bring a second life to a piece that you already have or that you already have access to. I really love their 5 principles for sustainable design. Make things simple, make more with less, use the right materials, build to last, and design for disassembly, which we'll talk a little bit more about. Here is our defining carbon impact. So this page is really meant to be used as a reference. There are so many words and they're very confusing. We've got carbon neutral, net zero, carbon negative, zero carbon, net positive. There's even carbon negative, and then there's carbon positive, some people say, but they actually mean the same thing, but carbon negative is more accepted. So there's just all of these words out there. So this page is meant to be a reference in order to go back and see what things really mean. We do have a little note here, just that this whole conversation around these carbon emissions can be controversial, and some say that it's up for debate whether carbon offsets really work, or how the carbon emissions are really accurately tracked throughout the entire supply chain. What happens after something is delivered? Is the company still responsible for the end of life of a product after a consumer buys it? So there's a lot of things to consider, a lot of things to discuss. It'll be interesting to see sort of the evolution of this idea. Here we're defining the circular economy. So the ideas here are to eliminate waste and pollution, circulate the products and materials, and then regenerate nature. So essentially, when we make products and then throw them away as waste, that's linear, but in a circular, we stop the waste from being produced and we're reusing things. We have a few examples. Here is Bremen Town Hall. This is in the Netherlands. This is a really inspiring story. They needed a new town hall in this village, but they're thinking that there's sort of like these shifting district boundaries, so they might not need this town hall if their village gets combined with another one in the future. But they needed this building now for around 20 years, they're thinking. So what they did was they designed this structure where 90% of the materials can actually be taken apart, dismantled, and reused. So an interesting component that they added with this is what they're considering the world's first material passport. So every component of the building is listed as a record. And when it comes time to disassemble this building, it can almost be used as this raw material depot for future buildings. And that material passport will be a reference of every component that can be reused. Another inspiring circular economy story is Reseat. So Brandy, she worked in the office furniture industry for 20 years, and she actually launched Reseat during 2020. And she was inspired when she found out that 17 billion pounds of office furniture end up in a landfill every single year. And that it was so difficult because there was no current easily used online marketplace to purchase or to sell office furniture that was in perfectly fine condition, but the offices are moving, they're downsizing, they need new furniture. For various reasons, the stuff is in perfect condition, but there was no application, no way to get it in the hands of another consumer. So Reseat exists, and they answer that call, and they facilitate that circular economy of office furniture. Really inspiring story. They're innovating their business model and their product every day, which is really cool. They have created this Reseat ID. So it's actually this unique number, similar to the material passport that we just looked at. This unique number acts as a second life passport that contains all the information about the furniture. So when you're ready to sell this, all of that information is tagged to that ID, and you're able to list it on this website at the click of a button. And it just creates this more seamless selling experience, and also buying experience for those looking to buy second life office furniture. So really inspiring, really interesting what designers are doing in this industry in order to give things a second life, to design with the circular economy in mind. And that does conclude our eco-innovation forecast. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to submit them and we will address them via email. And it is 12:30, so we did this in exactly 30 minutes. And thank you so much, everyone, for attending.